Join us on this journey as we explore the battles fought and the victories earned, uncovering the incredible impact these stories have had on our world. Welcome to the Battle Between podcast, where every story is a battle and every battle tells a story.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Battle Between podcast. This is your host Jeff Skinner here today, and I am with one of my most favorite humans on the planet right here that has truly poured into me for many, many years. He's a true warrior in every sense of the word. He's a retired Marine Corps Chief Warrant Officer 5 with 28 years of service. He brings a lifetime of experience to our show today, forged through combat, mentorship, and just a relentless pursuit of purpose. And comes from humble beginnings and spent a lot of time in the Marine Corps. He's a technical expert in targeting and fires and radar, and he's been in some of the most technical and high-pressure domains and combat theaters that the Marine Corps has seen, and has served with some amazing leaders. So living an absolute full life with honor and service. At the age of 60, he earned a black belt in kickboxing. That I got some jokes about that one, but we'll hold on to that one. He's a published author and holds 2 U.S. patents. There's some intentionality, some stoicism, and a heartbeats for service every day. So we're going to dive into some things like the power of vision, emotional strength, resilience, and veterans' path forward. I mean, there's just so much to uncover here. So Quint, brother, thank you for showing up today, man. Thank you for being here. Appreciate just you taking the time to come here. So
yeah, happy to be here, and it's an honor, man. I mean, you and I go back a ways, and I'm always happy to do anything you're part of.
Man, it's super cool because when I conceptualized this whole podcast, I was thinking to myself, I need people that can come in here and just give real, true stories, no fluff, no BS, man. Open book, for lack of better words. And, let's just start from your humble beginnings in an Adobe, because I'm sure, explain what an Adobe is.
Yeah, so Adobe is a mixture of mud and straw.
Wow.
That was my first home, was an Adobe home built into the hillside of a town called San Pedro, Arizona.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of that upbringing. And,
really?
So small, 4 siblings and me, so 5 of us. And my dad was a copper miner, my mom a stay-at-home homemaker.
Yeah.
And the town was predominantly Mexican kids, Mexican-American.
Gotcha.
Most parents didn't speak English, so a lot of the kids had broken English, and that created problems. But that's where I started.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
So there's 5 of us. There's 4 boys, 1 girl.
Wow.
We all served, 2 in the Navy, 3 in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And but we grew up like any family, right? Making fun of each other, messing with each other, fighting, scrapping, always getting in trouble, but always getting punished.
So what was it like as a child with 4 other siblings living in what some people would call a poor home?
Yeah. So, we'd wait for the government trucks to come in and get the cheese, the beans, the rice, all that stuff. And my mom was a magician in the kitchen. She could make anything out of nothing.
So you never were hungry?
No. I don't remember myself living a disadvantaged childhood.
Really?
It was a happy childhood, yeah.
So you have a lot of positive to take away from your childhood. Are there any memorable moments as a child where you go, man, that was a fun time, chasing the hills, running in the desert?
Yeah, we had so right behind our little town of San Pedro, there was a hill with, like any Hispanic town, there's a cross and some statues of saints up there, and we would go exploring back there, me and my buddies, and my cousin was with me one time, and we were throwing rocks, and my cousin was behind me. Well, he picked up a heavy rock and didn't quite make it past me. Cracked me in the back of the head. I'm crying. We went down to my aunt's house. We were the first house to come out of the desert.
Yeah.
And she put my head over the sink. I was, probably 7 or 8. And put my head over the sink and got a needle and thread out and stitched my head up and sent me home.
So you've been in the battlefield fixing since you were a kid. I love it.
Rock fights, man.
Where is San Pedro in relation to like some of the major cities in Arizona?
Kind of right between Tucson and Phoenix in the high desert copper mining area.
Small population.
We were probably less than 1,000, maybe a little over 1,000, if that.
Yeah, you were in the top 50% of your class is what you told me.
I was. Well, actually, I graduated number 13, but there were only 26 of us, so nothing to brag about, but I brag anyway.
Man, that's funny, dude. So middle school, high school. You have any kind of reflections from that period of time that where you kind of started feeling like I'm kind of maybe I'm figuring out who I am?
Yeah, I knew a couple of things that happened to me, I guess. Not really in middle school, probably in high school.
Yeah.
I started to hang with some of the bad crowd, you know, we all do, right? And I want to feel like an outlaw. Mm-hmm. We got caught, and I forget what it was we did. But my high school guidance counselor, Phil Masters, still remember this guy.
You remember his name.
Yeah.
Wow.
He pulled me into the office separately, and he says, Quint, this isn't you. And I said, well, why not?
Yeah.
He goes, do you care what other people think of you? And I said, no. And I reflect on that to this day.
Yeah.
Because I do care what other people think of me. Not that it's going to change who I am, but the perception that I create of me has impact on many people. My family, first and foremost.
Wow.
And then, you know, a little later on, I'm talking to my dad, and, you know, everything was built towards go to college. And I knew I didn't want to go to college. And I asked my dad one day, you know, I grew up singing a Marine hymn and knew that before my ABCs.
Nice.
And I said, Dad, you know, you always talk about the Marine Corps. Well, how come you got out of the Marine Corps and went in the Army? Why didn't you stay in the Marine Corps if it was so great? And he looked at me and he said one simple phrase. He said, I wasn't man enough.
Wow. So he took accountability for that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's the day I decided to join the Marine Corps.
Any sports in high school that you played?
Oh, yeah. So football and track were my favorites. I was all-state football.
Nice.
Yeah, I was a pole vaulter.
What? Get out of here.
Yeah, you look at me now going, I have trouble getting over a brick, right? But I was,
Holy smokes, all-state football player. What position?
Yeah, defensive end and offensive tight end.
Very
I
cool.
wasn't much for catching. I was a good blocker.
Yeah.
Defensive end, I just like hitting people. So,
Man, that's what football. I played a little bit of football myself, but I was always a small guy at the bottom of the pile, and there was a certain point where I was like, "This is too much, man."
Yeah, same. I was small, right? But I was very aggressive, and I liked the contact. So
Yeah.
But I knew I wasn't going to be playing college ball or anything. So, you know, it was a Marine Corps for me from my junior year. I knew I was going to join the Corps.
What year was that?
1979. I joined in 80.
Joined in
delayed
80.
entry. Yeah, I had a knee injury in high school football, tore a couple of ligaments, and I didn't know if I'd be able to get in the Corps, but
Yeah.
good surgery, or pioneer of orthopedic surgery back then in '79.
Really?
Fixed my knee up, and honestly, I hit it going through MEPS through the physical. I you know, kind of faked that one knee squat.
The duck walk.
Turned around, and I just gritted through it and got in, and that knee survived 28 years in the Corps.
Man, so I went in 99. That's 19 years later after you did. What does Marine Corps boot camp look like in 1980? Aside from the green fatigues,
That's
right?
the same thing. Well, actually, I came in right when they introduced the woodland camouflage.
Really?
We had the Santine cover still, but we had woodland camouflage, and what it looked like back then was probably very similar to what you went through, and that's the beauty of the Marine Corps.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't change.
The core values are there.
Right. How you make a Marine is how you make a Marine, right? And that's what's special about the Marines.
Yeah. So going in at boot camp was still 13 weeks long then?
Yes, 13 weeks.
You get out of boot camp. Do you already know what your MOS is going to be?
So I did. I went in with a guarantee. My dad was very adamant that I get a skill set that I could use after the Corps.
Yeah, little did he know, huh?
Little did he know. Yeah, so I went in as a computer operator.
Really?
And it was the IBM System 360. You could fill up your house with the tape drives that we used, and the whole comedy routine of loading tapes on a big CPU with blinking lights. That was our system. Now it's all on your phone and probably 100 times more powerful.
So you went in knowing you obviously had a good ASVAB score to get that MOS, right? You know, you did boot camp, you did probably MCT back then or SOI.
We didn't back then.
Really, there was no MCT SOI.
You graduated boot camp, you went straight to your MOS school.
Straight to the fleet.
Straight to the fleet.
No
I went
kidding.
OJT to the 4th FASC Fleet Automated Support Center.
Wow.
4th FASC out of the 1st FSG in El Toro, California, which is that base is closed now.
Been for a while, yeah. For the listeners, OJT is on the job training. That Marines in general and those in veterans, we use a lot of acronyms, so we'll try to spell those out for you today because I'm sure they're coming out here. Your family lineage, your father, you, two other brothers, you said?
Two other brothers
Marines.
Joined the Corps. One brother joined the Navy, retired Navy, senior chief, and my sister, Navy also.
And now you actually have children who are serving as well.
Third generation Marine, my youngest cannon, red
beast.
tab, super, grunt, sergeant, and doing great. And now Gunner, my middle kid. So my boys are Quint, Gunner, and Cannon. Mm-hmm. And Gunner is in the Space Force, started out in the Air Force, and when they stood up Space Force.
He was the smart one.
Yeah. He said, Dad, I don't see myself carrying a weapon in combat.
Yeah.
I said, well, you know what, son, that Corps ain't for you. So,
man, I remember Marine Corps birthday maybe 6 years ago, was it? He was the youngest Marine at our birthday. And maybe I'm not getting the years right, but I remember him being this frail little PFC maybe. He showed up. He was like super little. And then fast forward now, the dude's a brick house. Yeah. He's just a monster. So
he just, he was a black belt in Taekwondo out of Phoenix Martial Arts here in Rockwall.
Yeah.
Alan Smith, his mentor, taught him, just gave him all that strong foundation in martial arts. And then he got a black belt in combat Hapkido as well. This is before going into the Corps.
Combat Hapkido?
Combat Hapkido. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a variation of martial art that deals a little bit more with the fighting aspect, close-in fighting aspect, using sticks, using things like that, knives.
Up close and personal.
Yes, So that kind of honed him for when he joined the Corps and got into the Marine Corps martial arts program.
Yeah.
And was selected. He got his black belt and was selected to go to the Marine Corps martial arts instructor trainer program.
It probably felt second nature to him.
Kind of, but for 6 weeks, to be quite blunt, he got his ass kicked every day.
Yeah, good for him.
And he relished it.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd call home excited every time he'd call. He'd just like, Dad, we did this today, and we got up at 5, went running in the dark and in pairs, and we get ambushed like at certain points. We had to fight and grapple and Yeah.
Man.
That's Marine Corps stuff, man. That's,
There's so many different things. I just noticed right now on your left ear, you got your headphone flipped over. Yeah, flip that bad boy over and you probably hear it. You just thought you were deaf. The whole man deaf.
Oh, well,
there he goes.
I am deaf. Well, that's something different, isn't it?
We'll use that for a B clip. So you go in 80, you finish boot camp, you get OJT, you hit the first FSSG, which is, I don't even know if they're called that anymore. But fast forwarding from private through the ranks to gunnery sergeant, which is a very prestigious rank. It's probably one of the most respected in the Marine Corps. Are there any times within that 10-year period, because that's 2 enlistments for our listeners, that's a 4-year and a 4-year, plus now you're on your 3rd. Yeah. Are there any sort of like key moments in that 10-year period where you started to feel like, okay, I'm getting my wings underneath me. This is something I can tell I'm going to do for the remainder of my career. Anything in that area?
Yeah. So after I was in computers for about a year, I went on embassy duty, and I had to get some waivers because, well, look at me, I need waivers for everything.
You didn't look like that back then.
So they put me on embassy duty, and I went to El Salvador in 81, 82. There was a war going on down there. All them guys they got in that big prison down there right now, well, those were the guys fighting back in my day. Wow. Yeah, they're probably grandfathers now.
Absolutely.
But anyway, that was a big boost for me morale-wise. I was doing something that was really cool, traveling around the world. After El Salvador, I went to Geneva, Switzerland. Here's a Marine out in Switzerland and Europe skiing in the Alps and just having a great time, hitting Libo in the pubs and doing what Marines do, right? And getting in trouble, knucklehead stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I re-enlisted for interrogator translator. I wanted to go into the intel side.
Oh, wow.
And it just wasn't for me, and I requested out. And as an all-volunteer MOS, they said, all right, you got to get whatever the Marine Corps gives you. I said, okay, whatever, I'm good. I ended up as an artillery meteorological crew member.
Okay.
I'm like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
I'm filling up balloons, and I'm in artillery. What does that do? But that was really the formation of my technical concept of what I would be doing the rest of my life, right? Understanding what meteorology is and the impact. And then I was assigned to 510 out at Camp Lejeune. And a year later, I'm on recruiting duty.
Oh man!
So now I'm like, but I had unlike most, I had a great tour on recruiting duty, and I heard what y'all said about recruiters in your first episode with Rick Johnson. So I take offense to that because I was a good recruiter. I didn't.
That
lie.
means you listened to the episode. I love it.
did.
Yeah, I tell you, man, my recruiter was. I'll tell you that.
But yeah, no, I went out there as a recruiter, and I was doing good. Meritorious staff sergeant, meritorious promotion, something unique to the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
But they reward merit, and that hence the name meritorious. So pretty much on time to be a staff sergeant. I was about 7.5 years, and then I left recruiting duty. You got assigned to Hawaii and Desert Storm. Well, you would say that, right? But 4 years on the island. My wife spent 4 years on the island. I spent 14 months.
Yeah.
And we ended up. Let me back up. I met my wife on recruiting duty.
Okay.
I had to use them recruiting skills.
Oh, got to put a little effort into it, huh?
That's how I snagged her. Yeah.
Salesman for life.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
Always be selling.
Yep.
So then I ended up in Hawaii, right? But Desert Storm popped up, and they pulled me out of the staff academy early, and got sent out to the desert. Well, out there, I was fortunate enough to get a promotion, another meritorious promotion, a gunnery sergeant.
That was your combat promotion.
Yes. Al Gray, coming out of the Marine Corps, came out, and Sergeant Major Summers, and they both pinned my gunny chevrons on me.
Man, if the listeners don't know, to get a combat promotion is one of the pinnacles of any Marine or combat Marine. It's a really cool feeling to know that you've done something so phenomenal that you're now getting pinned on by the general. Yeah, it's pretty insane.
Yeah. Al Gray, one of the great Marines of all time, intellectually, warfighter, you name it, just a tremendous. He was a visionary.
Yeah,
and he truly changed the Marine Corps and made us what we are today.
Wow, that impactful?
Yes.
Really?
And Mattis was a student, right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, warrior monk is be a warrior, be a killer, but be smart, be intellectual, study, read.
100%. That's something I took away from you too, and I didn't do a lot of reading until just the last couple of years, and it really opens up what you think you know. You don't really know as much as you do until you start consuming knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, so 10 years in, you're now a gunnery sergeant, middle of Desert Storm. Yeah. That was a very quick evolution. In country, how long were you there?
A little over 8 months, and for most it was quick. Me a little bit longer because we were involved in the raids before the ground war.
Yeah,
we were involved in the Battle of Khafji when the Iraqis came across into Kuwait and took over the town of Khafji, and we went up there, and so we did some pretty cool stuff with artillery. I got to fire the first DPICM combat mission.
What's that?
Ever. Dual purpose improved conventional munitions. So each artillery shell holds 88 submunitions. 66 are anti-personnel, 22 are anti-armor.
Wow.
And when you fire one shell, it disperses about 300 meters above the enemy and showers down. And it sounds like popcorn, right? But it's creating carnage.
Yeah.
And we fired 2 batteries, 10 rounds on a column of tanks in Khafji.
Smoked them.
Because they had surrounded a recon team.
Oh.
That stayed in the city, defying orders to extract. But this recon corporal,
Marines.
the young corporal named Charles Ingraham, he told his team, "We're staying. This is what we do," And then he was in a pickle. Called in fire. We had an OV-10 relaying the call for fire, and we fired the mission. The BDA, we had to wait for the battle damage assessment of BDA. And when the OV-10 says we got to wait for the smoke to clear. A little while later, he comes back and says, be advised, 14 tanks destroyed.
14?
Troops burning.
Wow. Was that your first experience with what war really is?
Yeah, it truly was. I mean, the raids came before that, but then we went up to Khafji, and then it became real, right? Because you have lives at stake, and what you do, the decisions you make. And that was my first experience of having a vision.
Yeah.
I think that really tangible, because I saw what I could do with a certain type of fire mission before we did it. And the captain looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, no, this is this is the right way to do it. And, we called over to the recon team and said, request attitude, because for a mission like that, you need the attitude. And the captain looks at me like, attitude, request attitude. What? I go,
Yeah.
Never mind. I looked up, and all we had was a tourist map of Kafchi.
Gotcha.
And I looked, and I said, they're on a road. That means they're in a line. And the attitude is basically in mils, the orientation of that line. So I assigned it an attitude of 100 mils, right, 1,100 mils, and length of 1,500 meters. Figured that's a lot of tanks. They're going to be spread out a little bit.
Yeah.
And width of default width of 50 meters. And that means that those 2 batteries of 8 guns apiece, right? So you got 16 guns firing 10 rounds along that 1,500 meter line, showering down at 300 meters above them on those tanks. Would have been the most effective way to destroy them. We also had a little impact on that recon team. We told them to get down.
Yeah.
They did, but one of them got wounded.
Danger close, huh?
Yeah, but they survived.
Man, that's so your first initial combat was probably a significant moment in Desert Shield because you saved a recon team.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, recon and special forces, they're very much on their own program. Yeah. You see the movies and some things like that, but I don't really truly think that really depicts what they do. And every branch has, you got paratroopers, you got recon, you got SEALs, Delta, whatever.
Rangers, all that,
Rangers. Yeah. Was that your first close call with troops in contact?
Yeah, it was. And Ingraham received the Silver Star.
No kidding.
It was either, get office hours and ass chewing or pin a medal on him. And, he got a Silver Star for that.
Does it typically happen that way?
Yeah, whenever someone is awarded for valor, recognized for valor, it's because of a lot of things went wrong.
Yeah, we were just talking about this the other day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you see these guys who have these prestigious awards, the Silver Star, Bronze Star, Medal of Honor, and they get a lot of praise as heroes, but what the public doesn't see is that's the worst day of their life, and that's Absolutely. How you explained it.
Absolutely. Yeah, a chaotic event, and they made the best they could out of a chaotic event.
So Desert Storm ends. Yeah. You end up back at the States. What base did you end up back to Hawaii?
I'm back at K-Bay, right?
Yeah.
And Kaneohe Bay. And before we left, I was out taking a leak in the sand in the desert out there. My battalion commander was standing next to me, and it's dark out, and he just glances over. He goes, "Hey, Gunny, when we get back, I want you to put a warrant officer package in." And I said,
that was just going to be my next question.
Yeah.
That's where it started.
That's where it started, Lieutenant Colonel Rivers.
Really?
And I said, "Yes, sir. I'll take care of it when we get back." I get back, and now I'm the platoon sergeant, right, for Ops Platoon. I got 80 Marines. I'm living large. I'm a gunny at 10 years. And I'm running PT with them. We're holding formations, doing all those Marine Corps things.
Yeah.
And it's like, great. I'm definitely into this. And then the day comes, and somebody comes to grab me, and hey, the colonel wants to see you. So I run up, and yes, sir. He says, "Gunny, where's my warrant officer package?" I said, "Well, sir, I decided I didn't want to do that. I think I'm good as a gunny. I'm going to stay and listen."
You were living large.
I was living large.
Yeah.
And he said, "So you're enjoying being the ops platoon sergeant?" I said, "Yes, sir." Mm-hmm. He says, "Well, if I don't see a warrant officer package on my desk within 3 days, you're not going to be the ops platoon sergeant anymore." And I said, "Aye, sir." And I was voluntold. So I put my package in, forgot about it, went out and finagled myself a set of orders back to embassy duty. I was going to go out as a gunny. I was going to anywhere in the world. Who knows?
Send me wherever.
Yeah. Better you do in school, the higher your pick is of where you want to go, right? Your dream sheet. And I got my orders. I'm all set. And then I get a call from headquarters of Marine Corps. Sergeant Major Johnny Morris. He was the IG Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. He had been in Hawaii, so he knew me. We would play softball together and stuff. He says, "Hey, Avenetti." I said, "Hey, Sergeant Major, what's going on?
Yeah.
How's the life up in the head shed?" He goes, "Hey, look, knucklehead, I didn't call to shoot the shit with you. I called to let you know you got selected for warrant officer." And I go, "Oh, hell. Now I've got a quandary, right? What do I do?" And he said, "Well, look, I looked into it. You can turn it down. It won't affect your career." I said, "All right. Thanks, Sergeant Major." And he, with a few expletives, ended it with, "Sir, and he hung up.
Yeah.
So screwing with me a little bit, right?
Uh-huh.
He was a big guy. Guy was just a beast. Our brigade sergeant major was Sergeant Major Kellogg back then, Medal of Honor recipient.
Wow, stud.
Yeah. Jumped on a grenade in Vietnam. And
Man, imagine.
But you know, when I submitted my package, I was sitting at a board at regiment.
Yeah.
Went in, Kellogg gives you to, get your ass in there, gunny. And so I get in there, and I'm surrounded by a bunch of majors and lieutenant colonel, and they're grilling me, right? And finally the lieutenant colonel says, "Well, Gunny, I see you've got no off-duty education." I said, "Well, sir, that's true. You got my book in front of you. You can see I've been pretty busy." And he goes, "Yeah, fair enough." He says, "Well, look, this is a pretty competitive program. Only about 6% of those that apply get selected for warrant officer." And he goes, "What if you don't get selected? What then?" And I very matter-of-factly said, "Well, sir, that'd be just fine. I'll go on to be Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps." And I was serious. And every head was looking at my record book, popped up and looked at me like,
this guy.
Who's this knucklehead, right? And I said, "That'll be all, Gunny." And my package got ranked #1 out of 1st Marine Brigade.
And you just about faced after that?
I about faced and left kept on with my life. I was getting ready to go on embassy jet. I'm not going to get warrant officer.
So you got selected, but you weren't actually able to start the program yet. That was just the board to be selected?
That was the board to be selected. I had to wait almost a year before I went to school.
Oh, so you about faced and you did your thing as a Marine for next year?
Oh, yeah. So I was still the ops platoon sergeant Gunny, and I get living large. Life don't get no better, right? Gunny's the best rank. Well, until you become a W5, then it's...
Yeah, we'll go into that because that I did a lot of research on, I've always wondered, my father-in-law, you actually know him, small Marine Corps, right?
Yeah. Him and my brother, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Marine Corps is the smallest branch, most fierce first to fight. We're a little biased, but anyways, that's a whole nother story. But I never truly even knew what chief warrant officers did in the Marine Corps when I was in, because you'd see them pop their head in, and then you see them pop their head out, and then everybody be like, "Who's that guy? What's that crap on his neck? What is that shit on his collar? It's red and gold, and there's 1, 2, whatever." So man. So a year later, well, that puts you. Let's do timeline. So that's kind of what
I'm about 12 years in when I pin on W1,
and that's like what year you think that is?
This would have been 92.
Yeah, 92.
Makes math easy for me because I went in 80. So from there,
I just use that same.
If it was like 79 or 81, I'd be sitting here with my fingers and toes, right?
So tell me a little bit quickly what does chief warrant officer, is it like OCS, officer candidate school, or is it a different?
So right after officer candidate school, the lieutenant goes through that, right? A brand new butter bar.
Yeah.
After that, that's teaching them how to be a Marine, really, a Marine officer.
Yeah.
The basic school is where the warrant officers go to. We don't go through OCS. We went through our boot camp.
As enlisted.
Yes. So now we go through the basic school, which is teaching you how to be a platoon commander, right? And it's all infantry oriented, primarily infantry.
Combat regimented.
Yes.
Okay.
So the lieutenants, after OCS, go through the basic school. And that's where they get ranked and get their choice of MOS. Well, we've already got our MOS, right?
Oh,
we're selected
really?
As warrant officer for a specific MOS.
Gotcha.
Because you're supposed to be a technical expert.
That's exactly what that means.
Yeah, and I was selected for target acquisition, which meant radar, meteorology, and geodesy.
Yeah.
Right? Mapping and things like that.
Topology and maps.
Yes. So, I knew what I was going to be doing in 6 months, 3 months for us at the basic school, 6 months for lieutenants because they're a little slower.
Yeah, those butter bars, man.
Yeah.
Bless their souls. So you've been in 12 years, right?
Yep.
You've now been chosen as target acquisition to be a proficient technical expert in that field.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Where do you get stationed after you?
Yeah. You will always stay with the artillery. At that point in time, it was only with
Palms?
artillery. I went back to Pendleton with 11th Marines, went up to 29 Palms after that. From there, I went out to Fort Sill to become an instructor. And then back out to, after that was back to 1st Marine Division. And
Best division.
Yeah, amen, brother, amen. Blue Diamond, I wore my Blue Diamond T-shirt today in honor,
We love all you Marines, but if you're not first Mart Div,
you're just playing catch up.
that's it, baby.
So yes, I went back first Mart Div, and that was when OIF kicked off.
Man,
yeah. So a lot going on at that point in time, and like any Marine, I wanted to get in the fight, right?
we all did.
My wife always teased me, "You're always raising your hand. Send me."
Yeah.
But it just right place, right time, or depending on your perspective, wrong place, right time.
It took me about a millisecond to learn boot camp, MCT, comm school in 29 Palms, Fleet, 1st Marine Division, Camp Pendleton, that I was not a Marine that loved inspections. I didn't like some sergeant coming in my room telling me I didn't clean, field day enough, rah, rah, rah. Uh-huh. So I said, you know what? I know how to fix this. And I did what you did.
Yeah.
Field op, CAX, deployment.
Send me.
And, I have a very fast 4 years, but myself, 13 countries and 2 combat zones was pretty quick, man.
Yeah. So, we've reflected on this, and, when we first met and found out, hey, we were chewing on the same sand in OIF-1,
Absolutely.
Right? Going from Kuwait into Iraq and the march up, as it's called, into Baghdad.
Yeah.
And then up into Tikrit from there.
All the way up.
But you had already been into Afghanistan.
Yeah, I did a Westpac in 2001, and we were actually in Darwin, Australia on Libo. So not a single sailor or Marine is not drunk. That's the only way I know how to put it. And it was like midnight. The bars were having a party. We're doing our thing, and then boom, the lights come on. And next thing you know,
Lance Corporal Skinner is like, what?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was. I think I was a Lance Corporal, and all U.S. personnel, report back to, your ships, and it was like a movie, Quint.
Yeah,
it was so crazy because it was like filing out of the bars, and then we're all just, we're beelining for. And
you're getting sober real quick, right?
You got sober real quick, but I remember stopping and calling my folks on a payphone.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know what just happened. It's obviously morning at this time, so mom and dad picked up. We're going to war. I hung the phone up. I can't imagine what my parents were thinking on the other end of that line. And then we, went and cut squares in the Indian Ocean for a few months, and then, straight in combat landing into Camp Rhino, Afghanistan at 19, 20 years old, and it was a big eye opener for me.
Task Force 58 under Mattis.
That was it. Yeah. Which is, looking back at reading his book, doing the research on him, understanding conversations you and I have about him. Yeah. I had no idea the impact. I used to speak to him as a retrans operator in Iraq, call sign chaos, back and forth. And at 21 years old, you don't know who's on the other end of that line. Yeah. But I guess I failed to listen when he came and spoke to all of us before we invaded and told us my call sign's chaos. And then for 8 months, I talked to him on the radio and never had an idea. I'm blessed to look back at my history, to serve with guys like you and Mattis, and just really be a part of Marine Corps history.
Yeah,
right.
Most definitely.
That's the biggest thing that I took away from it, man. So you had a fast-paced career. Yeah. You're now CWO2 in Iraq?
No, by then I was a W4.
So you're a 4
I was already an old man,
Yeah. How long, so 12 years, you did 28?
I'm at 22 years now.
22. Is that so I did a little research on that, and my understanding is that to pick up Chief Warrant Officer 5, there's a requirement of a minimum of 22 years. Yeah. Because the Marine Corps wants to know that this is a career for you, right?
Sure. And to be honest, as a W5, you're supposed to be the source of knowledge on your particular technical expertise.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And you better be, because when the old man calls and says, or as Mattis said, to one of my buddies who became a W5 after me, Dave Thomas, he says, Gunner, why did our radar miss those rounds? And old Thomas started to, explain the laws of physics. That's how radar works. And Mattis looked at him and said,
wrong guy.
Thomas, the laws of physics do not apply to the 1st Marine Division. Fix it.
Marines are very matter of fact, man. I love that.
Yeah.
So you shared with us a story about your first encounter with, troops and contacts and fire for effect in a very close proximity. Yeah. Do you have anything that came from Operation Enduring Freedom or Iraqi Freedom that was similar to that experience?
Yeah, somewhat. My job during OIF-1 was to be the division targeting officer.
Yeah.
So my job was to do a whole lot of things, but I primarily do a target selection matrix, identify and prioritize targets for prosecution, high payoff targets, establish target selection standards, do all those processes that define what part of the enemy's infrastructure and forces we needed to target and kill or destroy first as a priority.
The critical tasks, essentially.
Absolutely. So I was there in Iraq, in Kuwait, with the advanced party of the 1st Marine Division to make sure that we kind of had the lay of the land, prep everything for follow-on forces.
Now, were you guys on the Kuwait side at this time?
We were on the Kuwait side in Camp Commando.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And a quick funny story was I'd been out there before, right? I was out there in Desert Thunder in '98 when we were going to attack, and then it got called off.
Yeah.
Kofi Annan and all that brokered peace at the UN. Anyway, the higher headquarters, MEF, the Marine Expeditionary Force, 3-star level, called me up and said, "Hey, Avenetti, you've been to Boubion Island?" I said, "Yeah, I've been out there. Back in '98, I went out there." And he said, "You think you could take the British Brigadier out there to do a recon?"
Oh, good Lord, those guys.
And I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And so they said, "Well, he'll be here in a few weeks, and we'll let you know." It's all right.
Yeah.
So they called me and said, "Hey, the Brigadier's coming tomorrow. Can you be ready tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So next day comes, and I've got about 3 vehicle security force getting loaded up, geared up, loading ammo, magazines. And I see Mattis coming across the fence from MEF, and he's a 2-star at this time. And you know that Mattis walk, and you know that Mattis look, right? And it's always intense, always focused. And he's coming right towards me.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh, shit, I don't think I mentioned to Mattis that I'm going out to Boubion. Well, he doesn't like to hear things from someone else, right? Well, he heard it from the MEF that I was taking. His Marine was taking the Brigadier out to Boubion.
He had that chaos look.
He had that chaos look, right? And he's looking beeline, and he said, "Avenetti." He's getting closer, and I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "I understand you're taking the Brigadier out to Boubion." I said, "Yes, sir. And with Mattis, you better own it. If you screwed up, you better own it. Doesn't matter, you own it, right?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Listen to me. Don't you get captured. You understand?" I said, "No, sir, I won't get captured." He says, "You got enough security?" "Yes, sir. You got enough, you got a cruiser, well, not cruiser, automatic weapons?"
Yeah.
I said, "Yes." I point over my security detail, and, they're all gearing up. And he says, "I mean it. Don't you get captured. You know too much." Because I was all, part of the planning. I was
100%.
that lead, that top level plan element.
Mm-hmm.
I knew all the targets all the way to Baghdad and then some. And I knew our scheme of maneuver.
Wow.
And he says, "I mean it. Don't you get captured. You understand me? You know too much." I said, "Sir, if I get captured, I'll kill myself." And he looked at me and he said, "No, just wound yourself and crawl back. I'll kill you." I said, "Aye, aye, sir," and I did an about face and went about my business. And because Boubion was about a stone's throw from Qasr, across the channel there. And
Boubion's Kuwait side or Iraq side?
It's Kuwait owned, but a stone's throw from Iraq.
It's just right there.
Yeah, and the Brits were going to do an amphibious landing there in Qasr, and that was that was a concern. And they wanted to put artillery pieces there to support their amphibious
And that was
landing.
more of a recon mission, just intel.
Yeah. The Kuwaiti had coastal artillery out there.
Yeah, because at this point, none of us had even, we were probably close to staging a few months after that.
Yeah.
Right, the LOD.
Follow-on forces were coming in. We were pre-attack positions and attack positions and logistic support bases, and all that stuff was being set up.
How long were you there with the preliminary?
I got there, and I want to say September of 2002.
So you're there almost 5 months, 6 months before we crossed the line in March.
Yep. Absolutely.
Man, that's insane.
Absolutely. So, but getting back to your original question, was that I had any like a Battle of Khafji? Well, every minute of OIF-1 was like the Battle of Khafji, because my job as a targeting officer was to shape the battle space.
Yes.
And to put it in Colonel Ben Saylor's words, as we got ready to attack, he brought me and my assistant, Mike Steet, before the division COC, and he said, "These are my targeting officers. They're my paid assassins. Anyone finds anything that needs to be killed, it better be reported to them immediately." And then I developed a target, and then I give it to our JAG, Lieutenant Colonel, to sign off on, to ensure we're in compliance with the law of armed conflict.
Wow.
Law of war.
You realize they had that step in that process.
We did until day one when the JAG got shot and he got shipped home. So I go to my boss, Gary Smythe. I said, "Hey, sir."
Game on.
I go, "Hey, who's going to sign off on my target cards?" He looked at me. He says, he's an Army Lieutenant Colonel, fire support expert. He said, "Well, Gunner, I guess you are."
Nice.
So I was the end-all, be-all to who got killed and who was getting destroyed and what we were shooting at. And I did that all the way up, and we took out a lot of bad guys, a lot of high-priority targets. And
Did you ever feel when you were, obviously that JAG, for those who don't know, is basically a military lawyer, just to, catch your six, like, don't kill this guy or do it this way and whatever.
Don't damage that school or that mosque or that apartment complex.
Because there's red tape involved with combat all over the place that most people don't know about it. Did you ever feel at a certain point that you were in over your head at that point, or had you been such a professional and technical expert at your field where you felt confident the entire time?
We had trained and rehearsed so much, I never at any point felt like I was in over my head.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like any of my targets were not, should not have been prosecuted. Mm-hmm. Everything I did with absolute confidence, and I knew that my leadership had my back.
Yeah.
So no, and we went out, I went about it methodically, and I'll tell you, one of the things Mattis said before we crossed the line of departure, and he told the entire division staff, he said, and he always talked like this, my fine young Marines, when we cross the line of departure together, you will kill the enemy. And when you do, act like you've done it before. And so that's the way I went about it, was prosecuting targets methodically, deliberately, and efficiently.
Until I just heard that come out of your mouth, I forgot that was a part of that speech, that he rounded every stinking, as a corporal, I probably saw stars on a Marine's collar maybe once, and it was like, oh, it's a rock star, but this was a general, for the listeners or the people who are watching, that he was a Marine's Marine in every sense of the word. Yeah. I saw him before the LOD. I saw him crossing the LOD. I saw him at different camps where we would refuel, resupply, the whole deal. I spoke to him personally as a retrans Marine communication. Like, this was not your typical, I'm going to sit back here, drink my coffee, play my chest while my Marines are dying. He was in the battle.
He was in the fight every day. And the reason he went around to every unit before we crossed the line of departure, and he conveyed his commander's intent, because he firmly believed that in the absence of guidance, his intent would guide your actions. So you would execute knowing what his intent was, commander's intent.
Yeah.
And commander's intent is a very important aspect of how we prosecute war.
That is such a heavy thought for people who don't understand what that is. It's like, you're going to do the right thing because you already know what the right thing is from those who are in charge of you.
Yeah, and if you were on Mattis's security detail, you were pretty much guaranteed to have a Purple Heart when you got back.
The dude was all over the place.
He was everywhere. They'd come back, shout up, they'd get rearm refit, go back out before sunlight every day, and he was at the front lines the whole time.
Man.
And he believed that he's got a division staff to fight the fight, today's fight. A commander, commanding general, more importantly, but a commander fights tomorrow's fight. You don't worry about today's fight. That one's in the books. It's being prosecuted.
That's why that sounds familiar.
You get paid to fight tomorrow's fight, to shape success for your organization, your unit.
That kind of leadership and mentorship, forget it being in the Marine Corps, that mindset of leadership and mentorship shapes lives, which is, you just kind of said it right there. It shaped my life without me even knowing it. Yeah. After seeing a map that hangs on that wall, the conversations that you and I have had, reading his book, And really, like, even after I read his book, you told me to read it a whole bunch of times, and I finally did. And I said, my head exploded. I was like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
This was the guy I got to follow into battle. And you want to talk about an immense sense of pride.
The genius.
And there's just, I don't think there's many people in the world that are even on his level.
No, there's no doubt, but there are a few.
Yeah.
And you know, it's odd, but they were all together for OIF-1. You got General Dunford. You got General Kelly. You know, Dunford went on to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Kelly became the chief of staff for the White House.
Yeah.
And Mattis and guys like Tulin, who was a 3-star, retired a 3-star. These guys, a Broad Medal for logistics, which is the higher learning of warfare.
Yeah.
And my brother served with Broad Medal in Task Force 58 with you. And, But all these individuals were a select group, a very rare group of talent that came together to prosecute such an efficient and effective maneuver warfare.
It was a quick run to Baghdad.
It was. And you talk about the power of the Marine Air Ground Task Force.
Nothing like it on the earth.
Nothing like it. Once you unleash a MAGTF of that magnitude, the 1st Marine Division numbered just over 22,000 at that point for the attack. And you unleash that kind of power, that kind of energy, it is unstoppable.
Yeah. Perfect
absolutely.
words for words,
Yes.
man. So you got Bradford, you got Dunn, you got General Mattis, all of these guys with, I mean, technical experts, knowledge, wisdom. I mean, just
war fighters,
right?
War fighters.
Are there a lesson from each of them that we could, like, let's talk Mattis real quick. Like, what's the one thing that you think, because we could have a whole podcast on this episode, but if we just went down the list, Mattis, Dunford, and Dunn?
Dunford and Mattis, Dunford, and Kelly.
Those three
were the three ones that truly made it.
Pushed us through.
Yeah, they were. And
do you have something from each one of those, or something that collectively that, like, you were like, this is
mostly from Mattis.
Mattis.
Dunford had 5th Marines.
Yeah.
So he was out fighting his fight. And then
you were collectively in tune with Mattis.
Yes,
Yeah.
daily basis, especially during the planning. And from Mattis, I learned the importance of mental rigor in planning.
Oh, okay.
He was a stickler for assessing the battle, for knowing your enemy, but not just knowing your enemy, but putting critical thought into how you would be, what you would do, the action you would take if you were the enemy.
Oh, so looking at it from the almost re-engineering.
Absolutely.
The process.
He was the master of getting in the enemy's OODA loop. And his call sign Chaos, that really had it was
funny
it stood
acronym.
for, it was an acronym that stood for, and I can't remember exactly, but basically it came down to Colonel has another something solution.
Yeah.
And original solution, I think what it was, but I may be wrong, but somebody can fact check me on that. You know? But that's what Chaos stood for. And it meant that he would, and what it really came down to is he was always in the enemy's head, more so than the enemy was in their own head. And he was a master at that because he had read so much. His home, he had a bachelor's home back then, and it was full of books. And
he even recalls that in his own book, how much he read, and
yes,
throughout the entire book, he was always reading something.
I'd say that's the lesson I take from Mattis was to read, to know your history, or you're doomed to repeat the mistakes of someone else. You don't have to make mistakes in combat if someone else already made them in a similar situation.
Yeah.
And when you study von Clausewitz, when you study some of the great historical war fighters and how they prosecuted War Napoleon, you can truly have a sense of what might happen in a given tactical situation. And that's where Mattis had his strength, was in getting in the enemy's mind, outthinking him, getting inside his OODA loop. And that's how you win.
I tell you what, people are probably like, what? OODA loop? What the hell's an OODA loop? Explain that to you.
So that was developed by Colonel John Boyd. Was actually an Air Force guy back in the early 60s. And he came up with the concept of...
Wow, that far back.
Yeah. Observe, orient, decide, act. OODA. And the faster your cycle of OODA went, observe, orient, decide, act, and we do it every day. Everything we do has an OODA in it.
Yeah.
The faster your cycle goes, the more difficult it is for the enemy to keep up with you. Now you're out cycling the enemy, out thinking him, and in effect defeating him. And you can apply that to life, to business, to school, to anything you do in life. Exercise your OODA loop. Be intentional with your OODA loop, and you'll always win.
Man, when you think about the applications that, observe, orient, decide, and act can be applied to, like you said, you do it every day.
Yeah.
For the listeners and the people that are watching this, you just don't know that the Marines or an Air Force military veteran said, I'm going to make this acronym.
Air Force guy came up with it. Marine Corps perfected it.
Yeah.
Just to be, hey,
we got to give them their credit.
Yeah, we got to give them a little bit of credit, right? You get in the fine print down there, Colonel Boyd. But he came up with that, and you apply it to combat. But you apply it to getting out of bed in the morning, right?
Everything.
Yeah. Am I going to hit the snooze or not? Never hit the snooze, by the way. Get your ass out of bed.
Yeah, get up.
Right?
Get
up.
Moving.
Start your day. And attack your day, right? You have it dominate the day, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's what it is.
I must have gotten that. I mean, I've always been a get up and go kind of guy, but as a small business owner, I'm ready to go.
You got to go.
My guys show up. I'm the more awake than all of them at all times. You know what I mean?
Well, what does a Marine NCO do? You get up before your troops
all the time,
right? Yeah. And I had a gunny in Switzerland, Ray Grundy. He also ended up becoming a first sergeant, then went warrant officer as a gunner, and retired as a W5. But Ray would say, and he called us rocks. He'd say, and I was a corporal then, I was a belligerent little corporal. He'd say, hey, listen, Rock, what are the 3 things a Marine NCO should always have? I go, an alarm clock, a wristwatch, and an NCO handbook. And I remember that, right?
Really?
To this day. And he goes, good. And why is that important? And he was from New York. He had that New York accent. Yeah. Look up Ray Grundy on LinkedIn. You'll be laughing till the cows come home, because the guy, he's just so blunt and so direct in his comments. It's refreshing, and kind of like Jim Booker on Facebook, I think.
Yeah.
I don't do Facebook, but yeah. Anyway, so Ray Grundy said a wristwatch, an alarm clock, and an NCO handbook. A wristwatch means that you're always cognizant of the time and where you're supposed to be. An alarm clock means you're up before your troops, so you make sure you're prepared for the day before they are.
Yeah.
And then an NCO handbook shows professional development, that you're intellectually curious about how to become a profession in what you do.
Better every day.
Professional.
Constant improvement.
Yes, absolutely.
It's so crazy when you think about our history, your history, and many other veterans' histories, how all of the things that we did there can be applied in most all other places in your life with the right mindset.
Absolutely.
You have a lot of, I hate to call them sayings, but you have shared with me over the years a lot of things that the first one, power of vision.
Yeah.
Understanding the power of vision. Share with the audience and the listeners, like, what that means to you and how they can apply that.
Yeah. So I'll go back to the Battle of Kafji, right, where I had my first true experience of how successful vision can be, how critical it can be.
Yeah.
But you have to act on that vision, right? You can have vision without a plan, without execution is a dream. So if you have vision and you believe in that vision, set a plan in place.
Yeah.
Your plan won't survive first contact, but that's okay. But a plan is important because it shows you put the mental rigor into executing that vision, into acting on that vision. So vision can be in business, can be in profession, can be in the military, can be in a single act, can be in a lifelong act.
Yeah.
Right? What do you envision your life to be? Man, if we could answer that, wow, we all have dreams.
Yeah.
But that's the difference between a dream and a vision, is you can act on a vision. A dream, well, hey, wow,
it's always the action that gets left out when people have dreams.
Exactly. It's the hard work, right?
Yeah.
Some people don't put in the hard work. You're probably one of the hardest workers I know. And
appreciate that.
And you're making it, right? Mm-hmm. Because I know your history. I know where you came from.
Yeah.
And one day you need to be sitting on the other side, and maybe I'll be the guy over there saying, hey,
we'll
let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Another one would be purity of purpose.
Yeah. So I'm, as you are, involved in a lot of nonprofit work, and my wife as well. And this is where I really came up with it, right?
Yeah.
So my wife's slim, Brenda. But she's been slim to me her whole life, and probably the most influential person in my life.
Wow.
Beyond a doubt. So, she gets involved in nonprofit work, and she'll say, there's so much infighting, and some people don't want to do this and don't want to do that. And I said, well, welcome to nonprofit work and volunteer work, right?
Yeah.
And I said, look, when you enter into the nonprofit, the volunteer world, you need to do it with purity of purpose and a happy heart. No one can take that away from you.
Because you're doing it for the right reason.
Yeah, if it's pure in your heart, you have intentionality towards it. It's something that you feel strongly about. Mm-hmm. Do it with a happy heart.
Yeah.
Don't let others influence your environment. It's your environment. That's you.
Man, you're always in control of your own emotions.
Absolutely, which goes to stoicism.
Yeah.
Right. And I learned this from Mattis. He carried his copy of the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius with him everywhere he went.
Such a good book.
It is, and it's deep, right? So some of the passages in there you need to.
You got to read it 5 times.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I read it 10
and they
times.
apply 5 different ways.
Yeah, they apply to so many different things.
Yeah,
and so I have a copy of the book. I read it constantly. I quote from there constantly, and that is stoicism. Is innocence. Having control of your environment.
Yeah.
Not allowing either of the black or the white, mm-hmm. the angry or the sad, own who you are.
And more importantly, understanding what you can control.
Absolutely. And that which you can't, let it go. It wasn't important.
I'm telling you, man, that was a game changer for me when I understood. You've known me for a long time. You've seen me hustle and grind and get mad and get frustrated and get sad and happy. And like you've seen all of me, right?
Yeah.
2 years ago, maybe, I had to understand. I had to quiet the noise in my life so I could hear what my purpose was.
Amen.
And then when I heard what my purpose was, I had to understand that my purpose isn't the same as everybody else's purpose, and I can no longer expect anything from anyone. Yeah. I have to be in control of myself. And thank you for sharing that with me, because that was an absolute game changer for me as a father, a husband, a business owner, a friend. Man, that is one mark in my life that I will always refer back to was, Skinner, you need to find your governor. Yeah. And I've been living by that since. So I love you for sharing that with me, man.
Amen, brother. And now that you've grown to the point where you are, I'm in a heartbeat. You say, hey, Quint, I need you to support me in this. I'm there.
Yeah.
Right? You reached a level of maturity and inner awareness that I know if you're doing something, you're doing it for the right reasons. And I'm there. I'll be your second, your XO, Young Marines. I'm your XO, right?
Love it.
Hey, I'm here to follow your lead.
I mean, for the listeners, man, when you find your intentionality, when you find your vision and your purpose, it absolutely changes the game for you, but not just you, but for those around you.
Yes.
Which is why we do what we do in our continued service.
Yes.
So continue to hustle and get you a mentor like I got. I love this guy. You had mentioned to me when we were talking not too long ago, and I had to I did the, what? And you said the plight of the veteran.
Yeah.
And I said, man, let me look what that is. So why don't you explain to people, this is a 2-part, right?
Yeah.
Explain what the plight of the veteran is. Let's start there.
Sure. So you and I share that attribute. We're both veterans. When an individual joins the military, whatever branch, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
And they spend 4 years, 30 years, whatever amount of time in. Mm-hmm. Most of us went in before we were really independent, right? We went in from high school or very shortly thereafter. And the military, rightfully so, provides structure, provides a safe place for you to grow, for you to make mistakes, for you to experience life. And then if you add the added benefit of going to combat, and I'll call it a benefit, tongue in cheek, but it is a benefit, quite honestly, because of the exposure of character that it brings out.
Oh, immensely.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now you've grown very, very rapidly in a chaotic environment. You've grown in a lot of ways. Yeah. Sometimes faster than you should.
Sometimes unquantifiable.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's confusing for a growing mind, a maturing mind. It's very difficult. And then all of a sudden you're done and you're out. And now it's like you got put out in the rain without an umbrella. Wow. And that's the metaphor I use. Mm-hmm. Now it's downpouring on you. And you're struggling with structure. Where's the structure? You're struggling with that safe environment. I am not a safe environment anymore, regardless of whether you're coming out of combat or not, right?
Yeah.
But
just that structure you had.
Yeah, that structure you had. And there's so many variables now that aren't identifiable or quantifiable.
Yeah.
So now you struggle. And what do a lot of us veterans do? You look to some substance to alleviate.
I fell right into that trap.
Yes. And you start drinking, and maybe you hit the drugs or whatever. You're trying to find that happy place, that calm place. And then they get into trouble.
You just told my whole life story in 30 seconds.
Brother, but that's so many veterans out there, right? But not all of them have that ability to say, you know what? In combat planning, we have decision points. You put your plan out on a map and you have DPs. Decision point is that critical juncture where you know you have to make a decision to go this way or that way, to take this action or that action.
Yeah.
Life is the same thing. You have decision points, and it's up to you to figure out what those decision points are, and then to make the right decision. And you made right decisions. A lot of veterans fail to make those decisions, and then they end up in trouble. They end up, one of many variables, either get in trouble with the law, try to kill themselves, or they're living on the streets, right? Or
so many are doing that every day.
Or they become you, right?
Yeah, the flip side of the coin.
Amen, brother. But you went through the bad stuff. Oh, you went through all the the trial and tribulation. So that's the plight of the veteran. The plight of the veteran is dealing with all those things. And even after 28 years, I went through that.
Oh, I mean,
28 years, you know.
You probably went through that more than anybody else, because that's such a significant period of time in your life.
I had no idea what being a civilian was.
No.
I joined at 17, and now here I am, 45.
Your whole life was the Marine Corps.
Yeah. And it truly was a gift.
Yeah.
But now I'm out in the civilian world, and I'm not understanding why some decisions are made certain ways, and I'm seeing a little less honor, a little less.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You know, a lot more crooked stuff and a lot more deceit. And I'm going.
It seems like that word integrity fell out of the dictionary in school.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Whatever happened to these non-tangible traits? And then I got involved with the kids and Boy Scouts. My kids were growing up. And, And that was therapy for me.
Yeah.
That was Yeah. That and then I eventually got involved with the vet court as a mentor, and my neighbor Joe Lynch got me involved.
Good old Joe.
Joe, man, tell you what, I tell people he taught me how to be a veteran.
What do you think veterans get wrong? I have some thoughts on this, but what do you think they're getting wrong these days?
I think at that decision point, many of them are thinking that the drugs, the booze, are the easier answer.
Yeah.
That it's easier and right answer, but it's not, right?
No.
And it all comes down to decision making. They're choosing to be a victim, and that's an easy choice to make.
It is.
Right? I'm going to claim PTSD. I'm going to claim my back hurts. I'm going to claim, brother, I've got braces all over my body because everything hurts.
I know Marines with multiple Purple Hearts, multiple combat action ribbons, and one in particular I know of, our brother Matt Phillips, just became a Rockwall sheriff.
Yeah, he did.
You want to talk about what I think is wrong? Is I think that veterans continue to perch themselves, and this is, let me rephrase this. Not all veterans. There's a percentage of veterans out there that like to perch themselves up, like the society that we live in owes them something, but the entire purpose of what we did was service.
Yeah.
Service without the phones out, service without the cameras around, service without the accolades is truly where the honor takes place.
Purity of purpose.
Purity of purpose.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Comes back full circle, man.
But you're right, man. You're right. Let's take the thank you for your service thing, right?
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
I'm not a fan of that. I'm really not, and I appreciate the sentiment.
Yeah, of course.
But really, I'm not looking for any thanks. I don't want any thanks. I was living the dream. I feel sorry for you that you didn't have the experience I had.
Yeah, you didn't get the opportunity to have it.
Yeah. So don't thank me. Don't give me 10% discount on something. It's fine. I don't need it. I don't want it. Just let me be who I am.
Yeah.
Right?
Let me exist in the skin I'm in.
Yeah. Don't prop me up.
Man, I've there's so many cool things coming out of this conversation, man, but I want to share with the audience real quick something that truly impacted me as a father and in my youth mentorship journey that I'm in, and it's this book right here, The Trail of Leadership, and Quint Avenetti wrote this book right here, and we'll add some information on where you can find this. Is it on Amazon or anything like that?
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon. Sure. Yeah.
Tell me quickly, what brought this up? Why write a book?
So I was a scoutmaster here at local scout troop.
Yeah.
And my boys were going through scouting in Troop 989, and after a while, I was assistant scoutmaster for a long time, and
They're kind of like XO.
yeah, I was the XO. I like being the XO, right?
Yeah.
I just
It's a good role for you.
Turn me loose. Let me have fun. And a bunch of parents grabbed me one day and said, "Quint, you need to be the scoutmaster." And I said, "Nah." Well, they gave me a couple of beers, and that loosened me up a little bit. And so I accepted. And at every meeting, at the close of every meeting, I would hold a Scoutmaster's Minute, which is part of the ritual, right? And you're supposed to talk about something. Well, there was Scout Oath, Scout Law. There's so many character traits that they list, right? Mm-hmm. And the Scout is honest, trustworthy, right? So I picked one and said, how can I describe this? Well, 28 years in the Corps, my whole life experience really was in the Marine Corps.
Yes.
So I would grab a battle, an individual, a war hero, or maybe somebody that I knew, and say, this is honesty, or this is courage, and let me explain to you what courage is, or what judgment is, and the kids, they loved it.
That's a playbook right out of the Crucible, man.
And after a while, they were, and I didn't have the Crucible when I went through boot camp.
Yeah, but that's impactful what you're doing, or did.
And after a while, they run outside and grab their parents. Mom, Dad, whatever. Come in, Mr. Avenetti's about to give a Scoutmaster's Minute.
Killer.
And some of the things were difficult to talk about because I told them about combat and told them about some personal experiences.
Yeah.
But it was so impactful that I thought when I finally gave up Scoutmaster, because my boys were Eagle Scouts and off to do their own thing, I think I'm going to codify this in a book because I think character, the development of character and a value system is one of the most critical things we can do for our kids, our children.
Without question.
Yes. That's a tool they can use the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. That forms their left and right azimuth limits and informs their decision-making or their judgment.
Creates character.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Man, well, I know this was probably one of the first books that when you gave it to me, I was excited to read. And I think I might have even texted you, dude, I can't put this thing down.
Yeah.
There were so many relatable topics to me as a father, first and foremost. Yeah. And then I was able to take these things in here and apply that. And, for our listeners and those who watch this, I challenge you to get involved with a youth mentorship program. because the paycheck to the heart there is, I mean, you can't put a dollar amount on it.
Yeah.
When you get a
you're
group
a
like
billionaire. Yeah.
our young Marines right now, we have 14 or 15, another 5 on the way. When you see them, and then 2 years later you see them again, they're a little taller, their camis don't fit as much or whatever it is, but you can see their eyes have changed and they look with, you know, intention when you're speaking. Like, that's an amazing feeling, man.
When you can impact the life of our youth in a good way, you're ensuring the future leadership of our country, truly.
If we want to take this country back, we have to take it back through our children.
Amen, brother. Amen.
That's it. Is there this one's a little deeper for thought. And what's the legacy that you felt like you've built? And what would 25-year-old Quint Avenetti tell you today?
Oh, geez. Wow. The legacy I think I built lies in my sons.
Love it.
So we build our legacy every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we use the term earn the title every day. That means earn that title of Marine every day. Just because you got out, you're retired, doesn't mean you stop earning the title. If we're going to say you're a Marine for life,
better earn it every day.
You better earn it every day, right? Mm-hmm. And that's in your acts, in your thinking, in your actions, who you are, what you do. Your legacy is developed each and every day, and you can screw that legacy up in one act, in one day, right?
Yes.
You know, the old saying, one-off shit does away with a whole lot of attaboys.
Very quickly.
So every day we should wake up with the intention of putting our best foot forward, of doing our best, because tomorrow's not a promise, right?
Yeah.
And I tell my kids, I tell whoever wants to listen that, look, we get one life. We get one life, and we're gifted this life, and we're gifted with the freedom of choice.
Mm-hmm.
You choose what you're going to do with this life, but when it's all said and done, please don't be that guy or gal that looks back and say, I wish I would have. Don't be that person, because you've wasted life. And too many people have died for it.
Yeah, too many people have died for it, which is even more impactful.
Yeah. And so what would the 25-year-old, what was I? Probably Staff Sergeant Avenetti at that time.
Yeah, right before Gunnery Sergeant.
Staff Sergeant. Yeah. What would he say about me today? He'd probably say, you done pretty good, but you're still a knucklehead.
Yeah.
Still
got work to do.
Still got work to do, right?
Yeah.
But have fun while you're doing it. A purity of heart, or purity of purpose, and a happy heart.
Yeah.
Be happy, because it's a choice.
So much of a choice. And I think in the hustle and the grind of the structured chaos of life is what we call it, people forget to kind of enjoy what they're doing. Yeah. You know, you got from the CEO down to the small business owner to the nonprofit, whatever it may be, the purpose is to enjoy what you're doing in service of others, to lift others up. And the moment that you feel like you're in the wrong spot, if you don't like where you're standing, move.
Change your environment.
That's it.
Yeah.
Change your azimuth.
Yeah.
That's it, man. So, well, man, I tell you what, wow. You know, I texted you last night. We might need to do this a couple of times. And I think there's still a lot to unpack here, but I got this cool little segment that I came up with, and it's called the Fire 4 Effect. And I'm going to hit you with some unknown questions. Okay. And I just want you to kind of tell me your first thoughts. So the first one is, if you had to wear a warning label, what would it say?
Come on, man.
I got a couple I can make up for you, but I'll let you answer it.
Open with caution.
Okay. Your second question, what is your top 2 fishing spots? I know you're an avid fisher. Top 2 fishing spots.
I'm a new avid fisher, because I did not fish before.
Gotta fish this big.
My God. So, my God, how big a fish was it? So, the White River in Arkansas, simply because that's the first place I went fishing, and it's become an annual event with a couple of us. With the boys, right? And the gals. We take.
Yeah.
Me and Mom and me and Slim are out there on a boat, and alone and unscared.
And
we're pulling in fish.
Love it.
So that's one. And then the other place we went to was up in Vancouver Island, Canada, and
oh, that's right.
We caught some salmon up there, and the orca are jumping around, and what a magnificent place!
Wow.
And king salmon, and brought it back, and I'm still eating it.
Most proud moment as a father for your children? Can be collectively or individually.
Okay. Yeah, my oldest, as he,
Quint.
Yeah, Quint, and when he showed his true character, got some accolades and awards at a company event.
Yeah,
and it's in my book. When he chose to give all the gifts he was given to his team, and
character
said character, right? Gunner, the Space Force guy.
Yep.
He had a life-saving event when he was out at Vandenberg. Got an Air Force Commendation Medal and stuff. But he made a quick decision to act to save someone's life. That was a very proud moment. There's so many of them, right?
It's hard to pick one, yeah.
Yeah. Cannon, couple of them, right? Maybe the day he decided, he told me he was going to join the Marine Corps, because
who wouldn't be proud?
I told Mama, right? I got after Gunner joined the Air Force, I told Mama, I said, look, I got one more. If you don't join the Marine Corps,
it dies here.
No, I said, I'll make another one with or without you. And she said, that'll be without me.
Yeah.
So he said, I'll join the Corps. And then I think when he got his black tab as a Marine Corps martial arts instructor trainer, I know how much what he went through for that. That was probably another.
You've done an amazing job, man. I haven't really met Quint as much as I have the others, but just the interactions that I've had with them, it truly speaks volumes of the character that you've instilled by the actions that you've provided as a father. So last question, a little bit more serious. What's one mantra or quote you live your life by that you could share with our listeners?
Wow. I do a quote every week at Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
What's the quote for this week then?
I haven't got it yet.
Okay.
I haven't got it yet. So it's probably going to be a Marcus Aurelius. I like going back to him, and he gives us a lot of food for thought. But it basically, probably the one is the one I gave last week from Marcus Aurelius, 2 weeks ago. And I can't do it verbatim, but basically he's saying that you have the choice to allow people to influence your environment, and you also have the choice to ask them to leave.
Oh.
You control your environment. You control your destiny. You make it happen. Wow, don't rely on anyone else.
Man, brother, I can't thank you enough for just who you are to me as a person and for taking the time to come in here with us again. Thank you, Mr. Quint Avenetti, for joining us on the Battle Between podcast. Brother, I love you, man. Like, I just can't even put how much I respect you into words, and I appreciate you taking your time to come in here. So, Semper Fi, Devil Dog.
Semper Fi, brother.
Raw.